On a sweltering Lagos afternoon, fate pressed pause on traffic and unmuted a memory. Chidi Okonkwo, once the boy who counted coins for bread, stepped from his sleek car and heard a whisper that sounded like yesterday. There, by the cracked pavement, a woman clutched two sleepy twins in a paper cup of dust. Her scarf hid little, and her eyes, once bright with comparisons, found his. Amara. The same mouth that told him love without money was hunger now trembled for mercy. In that single heartbeat, two timelines collided, the night he almost ended everything on Third Mainland Bridge, and the dawn, a stranger's umbrella pulled him back. Wealth had changed Chidi's address, not his heart. But mercy is not the same as reunion, and today would draw that line in ink. Before we dive in, say hi in the comments with your city and your local time. I love seeing our African Stories family around the world. And if you're new here, hit subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a life-changing story. Chidi Okonkwo had never known what it meant to wake up in comfort. His earliest memories were of a leaky zinc roof that drummed like 1,000 angry fists whenever the rains came, of smoky kerosene lamps that filled their one-room apartment in the Mushin district of Lagos, and of his mother's tired hands sorting peppers and tomatoes on a rickety table at the market. His father, once a respected primary school teacher, had long retired on a pension so small it barely kept Gary on the family's table. Life in the Okonkwo household was a continuous negotiation between hunger and hope. As a boy, Chidi learned quickly that dreams did not come cheap. While other children spoke of bicycles and new sandals, he spoke of computers machines he had only glimpsed once in a dusty cyber cafe when he went to help his cousin print out a wake result slip. The blinking screens and humming processors fascinated him, and in his young mind he swore that one day he would understand their language. His mother, Mama Ifeoma, used to place her palm on his head and whisper in Igbo Nwam, "The child who carries patience carries gold." Those words became the refrain of his growing years. When Chidi finally gained admission to study computer science at the University of Lagos, it felt like a miracle carved out of sweat and sacrifice. His parents sold two of their prized possessions, a battered sewing machine and his father's old wristwatch, to gather his first-year tuition. Mama Ifeoma doubled her hours at the market, her fingers often raw from cutting vegetables, but she would smile whenever Chidi called to tell her about lectures. "Endure, my son," she would say. "Your light will shine." At university, life sharpened him. He owned only 2 pairs of trousers, both faded, but he wore them with a quiet dignity. While classmates threw parties in Yaba and drove flashy cars gifted by rich uncles, Chidi spent long nights in the campus lab, eyes burning under fluorescent lights, fingers dancing across keyboards as he devoured programming manuals, and practiced hacking into simulated systems. Hunger often gnawed at him, but he silenced it with water, with determination, with the thought of a future that could be built line by line, code by code. It was during those hungry years that he met Amara. She was radiant in a way that made rooms bend toward her. Amara carried herself like Lagos, sunlight bright, warm but scorching if you lingered too long. She studied business administration, and while she often complained of being between opportunities, she had a knack for slipping into comfort. Chidi admired her at first from afar. Then one day in the crowded cafeteria, she teased him about always reading instead of eating. They spoke, laughed, and within months she was visiting his cramped off-campus hostel with bowls of jollof rice or okra soup that stretched over 2 days. At the beginning, their love was soft. She would call him my genius, tapping his forehead with playful pride, and they would whisper dreams of one day living in a flat with curtains that swayed like music. On evenings, when the Harmattan wind slipped through the cracked windows, they sat close, sharing warmth and weaving fantasies of the life they would build together. But Lagos has a way of testing promises. After graduation, reality hit Chidi harder than he expected. He walked the streets with neatly printed CVs tucked under his arm, but the doors of big tech firms refused to open. Weeks became months. His savings vanished and pride forced him to borrow from friends. Finally, he found work at a small, struggling computer repair shop where they called him IT engineer, but paid him a wage barely enough for rent and watery stew. Still, Chidi pressed on. He rose early each morning, polished his shoes, ironed the same shirt until the fabric thinned, and carried himself like a man who believed his current position was only a stepping stone. But Amara began to see him differently. The cramped room that once felt like their little nest now seemed to her like a cage. The laughter that once bubbled easily from her lips became scarce. She started to compare. "Do you know Emmanuel?" she asked one night, her tone light but sharp. "He was in your faculty. He just got a job at the bank company car, a flat in Lekki. Imagine." Chidi stirred his plate of Gary quietly. "Good for him. My own path will open soon." Her sigh was heavy, carrying both mockery and warning. Your path needs to hurry. I cannot keep eating promises. It was not the first time she made such remarks, and it would not be the last. Chidi tried to bury his hurt with patience, remembering his mother's words. Yet patience, though golden, does not shield a man from the sting of betrayal. The first real crack came on a Thursday evening. The office generator had sputtered into silence, so the boss dismissed everyone early. Chidi stopped on his way home to buy suya, imagining the delight on Amara's face. He hurried up the stairs of his apartment block, paper parcel warm in his hands, but as he pushed the door open, a strange laugh greeted him. A man polished in a crisp polo and heavy cologne sat comfortably on his bed. Amara, wig removed, sat too close. The suya slipped in Chidi's grip oil, seeping through the paper into his palm. His voice shook but held firm. Levy told the man. The intruder smirked, rose slowly, and brushed past Chidi, leaving a scent that felt like an insult. When the door shut, silence screamed. Amara rushed to explain, tears welling on cue. It's not what you think. I needed help money for little things. Please, nothing happened. Chidi wanted to believe her. He wanted to unsee the crooked scarf on her head the way the man's shoes had pointed toward his bed. In the end, because his heart had been trained to endure long before it learned pride, he forgave her. He whispered, okay, I forgive you. For a while, peace returned. She cooked again, called him my genius, and painted their future with sweet words. But beneath it all, something had shifted. The warmth of their love was no longer unconditional. It now carried the sharp edges of comparison, of desire for what he could not yet provide. And as Lego's days unfolded, the shadow of betrayal lingered, preparing to grow darker. The weeks that followed that first betrayal unfolded like a theater of half-truths and unspoken wounds. Chidi tried to tell himself that forgiveness was enough, that love could glue back the cracks that money and temptation had carved into Amara's heart. Every morning he buttoned his threadbare shirt, tied his cheap tie, and walked with quiet dignity to the bus stop, laptop bag slung over his shoulder like a soldier's rifle. But even as he fought for dignity in the little things, Amara's eyes were elsewhere. She started spending more time away from the tiny room they shared. She would dress up, fix her wig carefully, spray perfume with a flourish, and mutter vague explanations. I'm going to see a friend. Don't wait up, she would say. Sometimes she came home late, her smile forced her screen, flipped face down whenever a message buzzed. Chidi noticed. He noticed the second toothbrush in the bathroom, blue bristles, still damp. He noticed the perfume lingering on their pillow, not the cheap kind he could afford, but something richer, louder. When he asked, Amara brushed it off with a careless laugh. You're overthinking. That's my cousin's boyfriend's brush. He forgot it. The lie wore no disguise, but Chidi swallowed it, too weary to fight. Instead, he prayed. Every evening after long hours fixing dusty CPUs and troubleshooting printers that groaned like tired men, he knelt by his bedside and whispered into the silence. God, give me strength. Give me work. Give me wisdom. Don't let my heart be foolish. He scribbled notes in his battered diary. Pray. Apply to 3 jobs tomorrow. Learn new coding frameworks. Save 1,000. Love Amara better. Don't cry. For every wound, he tried to offer patience. For every comparison, he tried to respond with gifts within his meager means, a hairpin, cheap earrings, a small airtime recharge card. Yet every gesture seemed to shrink beside the images Amara painted of other men. Do you know Sagun? He just got his girlfriend a new iPhone, she would say, sliding his plate of beans away with a grimace. How can I keep eating like this while others are living well? The comparisons became daggers. Chidi smiled through them, but each one drew blood. He told himself that all great men face trials, that one day he would prove her wrong. He clung to his mother's proverb, patience is gold. But gold before it shines must first be tested in fire. One evening, determined to rekindle what was slipping away, Chidi returned home early with a surprise. He had bargained fiercely at the market for a small pack of chicken, tinned tomatoes, and rice. He pictured Amara's delight, imagined them laughing together over a hot meal. Instead, he found her in front of the mirror, adjusting a sleek blonde wig. The red dress she wore clung to her figure, the kind of dress that announced itself before the woman wearing it did. Where are you going? He asked softly, setting the groceries down. Out, she replied, without turning, dabbing gloss on her lips. With who? She rolled her eyes, impatient. A friend. Must you know everybody I meet? Don't stress me, Chidi. He nodded slowly, throat tight. At least call me when you get there. She kissed his cheek absent-mindedly, like one tips a waiter, and walked out. The door closed gently. The silence slammed. That night he cooked for 2 but ate alone, leaving the second plate covered in case she returned hungry. Hours passed. She came back close to midnight, laughter echoing down the corridor before she entered. Her perfume announced her even before the click of her heels did. "How was it?" he asked, voice cautious. "Fine," she said, tossing her wig onto the chair and heading for the bathroom. The blue toothbrush was gone by morning. Chidi endured, but inside a storm brewed. He came from a home where love was endurance, where his father kissed his mother's hands after long days at the market. He believed that if he loved enough, forgave enough, held on long enough, the tide would turn. But Amara's discontent was a river carving deeper channels through their relationship. Then came the Saturday that broke him. The tailor's machine hummed outside the building like an omen, while inside Amara sat on the thin mattress, her face unusually serious. "Chidi," she said, folding her hands. "Let's talk." His stomach sank. He nodded. "I'm tired," she confessed. "This life, this struggle. I need more. I deserve more." Chidi swallowed hard, his eyes burning. "You deserve everything good. Just give me time. Please let me try a little longer." She looked at his calloused hands, the hands that fixed computers' iron shirts, and reached for her with gentleness. Then she looked away. "Okay, but things must change." That night, he wrote another list in his diary. Raise money for Amara's phone. Ask boss for extra shifts. Update portfolio. Don't lose yourself. Don't give up. 2 weeks later, he managed to repair a second-hand phone until it gleamed like new and placed it in Amara's hands. She squealed, hugged him, posted a video with the caption, "My man tour." For one brief moment, Chidi felt like a king, even if his crown was paper thin. But the hunger in her heart was not for love. It was for wealth. And love without wealth was not enough to hold her. As Chidi's hope rose with every small victory, Amara's patience thinned. She had already crossed lines he did not yet see. And though Chidi prayed harder, worked harder, and loved harder, fate was preparing him for a humiliation that would split his life into before and after. Because one day soon, in a crowded mall filled with strangers, he would kneel with a ring bought from 3 months of skipped meals, and the woman he loved would shatter him with a word. The morning of the proposal began with nervous excitement that churned in Chidi's stomach like a storm at sea. For 3 long months, he had starved himself of little comforts to save for this day. He took extra repair jobs in dusty schools, skipped meals, even sold his old laptop, the same battered machine that had carried him through university, just to scrape together enough for a modest silver ring. The stone was no diamond, only a cubic zirconia, but to Chidi, it glimmered with the weight of his love, with the promise of a future he still believed in. He rose before dawn, bathed with water fetched from a neighbor's pump, and carefully laid out his best clothes. His white shirt, faded from too many washes, smelled faintly of lavender soap his mother had sent from home. His jeans were ironed until the creases stood sharp, and his black shoes, though worn, had been polished to a patient shine. He checked the small velvet box again and again, as if to reassure himself that the symbol of his devotion was still there. When he met Amara at the entrance of the bustling Palm Shopping Mall in Victoria Island, his heart swelled. She looked stunning, dressed in a red gown that hugged her curves heels, clicking with confidence, her makeup perfect, hair sleek. Passersby turned their heads, whispering admiration. Chidi felt proud simply to be the man walking beside her. "You look beautiful," he whispered. Amara smiled, her lips painted crimson. "And you look clean. You tried." They strolled hand in hand past glittering jewelry shops and perfumeries that teased the senses with wealth he couldn't yet afford. Chidi's palms sweated as they approached the food court. His plan was simple: propose in the center of it all, to show her and the world that, despite his humble means, his love was grand. At a table surrounded by strangers, Chidi took a deep breath, heart hammering like a drum. He lowered himself onto one knee and pulled out the small box. Conversations around them slowed, heads turned, and phones began to rise. "Amara," he said, his voice trembling yet firm, "from the day I met you, you've given me reasons to believe in tomorrow. I know I don't have much now, but I promise to work every day of my life to build the future you deserve. Will you marry me?" The crowd gasped, murmurs rippling through the air. Some smiled already, reaching to capture the viral moment. But Amara's face froze. The red on her lips seemed sharper now, her eyes darting nervously around the crowd. "Chidi, get up," she hissed, her voice sharp but low. He blinked, confused. "What? Just say yes." Her tone grew louder, slicing through the expectant silence. "I can't marry you, Chidi. You're a good man, but love doesn't pay bills. I can't suffer in my father's house and then suffer again in marriage. I need a man who is financially stable. I'm sorry." The air shifted. Smiles turned into awkward stares. Someone whispered, "Ah, see heartbreak," another muttered, "This is why you don't propose broke." The moment stretched into an eternity of humiliation. Chidi stayed, kneeling a moment too long, rejection ringing in his ears like thunder. Then with a trembling hand he closed the ring box, stood slowly, and forced a smile that never reached his eyes. The mall's fluorescent lights felt like spotlights exposing his pain to the world. They left separately. He walked through the crowd like a ghost, each step heavy with shame. Unknown to him, videos of the scene had already begun to circulate online with mocking captions. "This is why love without money is foolish." 2 days later, Amara returned to his apartment. Her demeanor was calm, rehearsed, like an actress playing her final scene. "Chidi," she began softly, perching on the edge of his bed. "I do love you, but love is not enough. I can't build a life on promises. I'm seeing someone else, and we're getting married soon." Chidi's chest tightened. "You mean that's why you said no?" She nodded, eyes avoiding his. "I can't marry into another poor home. I deserve a wealthy man. I can't suffer twice." The words carved into him deeper than any knife. They didn't fight. There was nothing left to fight for. Amara adjusted her handbag, offered a cold "I wish you the best," and walked out. That was the last time he saw her, until fate would twist the knife years later. The days that followed blurred into gray. The humiliation at the mall burned into his memory, replayed on social media until it became a cruel meme. Neighbors whispered. Friends avoided his eyes. At work, he moved like a shadow, no longer staying late to learn, no longer carrying the fire that once defined him. He ate little, answered his mother's worried calls with lies. One evening, drenched from walking home in the rain to save transport fare, he sat on his bed and let the thought he had been fighting creep in. What's the point? His dreams had collapsed. The woman he loved had abandoned him. The world had laughed at his shame. By 9:00 p.m., he found himself standing at the edge of 3rd Mainland Bridge, Lagos lights glittering on restless waters below. Cars rushed past their horns, indifferent. He thought of his parents, of their tired faces, of the disappointment his death would bring. He thought of Amara's words, "I can't suffer twice." He thought of the crowd's pity. One step forward and it would all be over. "Brother," a voice called. Chidi turned. A middle-aged taxi driver in a faded green shirt stood a few meters away, umbrella shielding him from the rain. His face carried lines of struggle, but his eyes held compassion. "You day okay?" the man asked gently. Chidi forced a shaky smile. "I'm fine." "No, you're not," the man said, stepping closer. "I've seen this look before. Young man, your story is not over. Don't let someone else's choice be the reason you end your life." The words pierced through the fog. Chidi's throat tightened. No one had ever spoken to him like that. "Listen," the driver continued, voice steady like a father's. "There is more ahead than you can see now. You think this is the end, but it's just a bend in the road. Go home, rest. Tomorrow you start again." The rain softened, as if even the heavens listened. Slowly, Chidi stepped back from the edge. Tears mixed with raindrops on his face. "Thank you," he whispered. The driver smiled faintly. "When you make it big, remember tonight. Remember that God still has your name in his book." That night, Chidi walked home under the rain, his clothes soaked through, but his steps lighter than they had been in weeks. He didn't know it yet, but the bend in the road had already begun. The rain-soaked night on 3rd Mainland Bridge became a silent covenant between Chidi and life itself. As he trudged home with his clothes clinging like wet rags, he replayed the taxi driver's words over and over. "This is just a bend in the road." He couldn't explain why those simple words mattered so much, but they lodged inside him like a seed refusing to die. He didn't even know the man's name, only that his kindness had interrupted a decision that would have ended everything. The next morning, Chidi awoke to a pale light seeping through his cracked curtains. His apartment smelled of damp clothes and despair, but something in his chest felt faintly different. A thread of resolve, fragile but real. He brewed watery tea, sat at his old desk, and flipped open his battered laptop. For the first time in weeks, his fingers moved with purpose as he updated his CV, revising every line as though his future depended on it. Later that day, while troubleshooting a stubborn office printer at the IT shop, his phone buzzed. The caller ID read Tunde, an old university friend he hadn't spoken to in nearly a year. "Guy, where you day hide?" Tunde's voice was warm, cheerful. Chidi forced a smile. "You know, surviving." Tunde laughed. "I've been looking for you. Listen, my company is expanding. We need a solid IT guy, someone who understands cybersecurity infrastructure, the whole package. The first name that came to mind was you." Chidi froze, the printer cable slipping from his hands. "Are you serious?" "Serious like Lagos traffic." Send me your CV today. The interview's next week. I'll recommend you directly to HR. When the call ended, Chidi sat still, his reflection faint on the printer's dark screen. The voice of doubt whispered, "What if you fail?" But louder now was the echo of the taxi driver. "Your story is not over yet." That night, he sent his CV. 1 week later, he stood in front of Skyline Tech Solutions' towering glass building in Victoria Island. The place looked nothing like the dusty offices he was used to. Marble floors gleamed under bright lights. Chrome elevators reflected his nervous face. Adjusting the collar of a borrowed blazer, Chidi whispered a prayer before stepping inside. The interview panel grilled him relentlessly. A woman in a sharp navy suit asked about network vulnerabilities. A bearded man quizzed him on system architecture. A younger tech officer typed furiously as he responded. Chidi's palms sweated, but his mind remained sharp. He drew from those endless nights in the campus computer lab, explaining how he once built a patch from scratch that saved a client's data. By the time he left, a calm certainty settled in his chest. He had not been perfect, but he had shown his worth. 3 days later, the call came. Mr. Okonkwo, HR, said, "We're pleased to offer you the position of IT manager. Your starting salary will be $750,000 per month plus allowances and benefits. Can you start on Monday?" Chidi's throat tightened. Yes, I can start." He ended the call, sat down on his small bed, and for the first time in months, smiled until his cheeks hurt. The bend in the road had arrived. The months that followed transformed him. At Skyline, Chidi worked like a man on fire. He arrived early, stayed late, volunteered for extra projects. His dedication didn't go unnoticed. Within 6 months, he was leading a small team. Within a year, his salary doubled. With his new income, he moved from his cramped room into a modest 2-bedroom flat. He bought a Toyota Camry, sent money home regularly to his parents, and finally replaced his mother's rickety table at the market with a sturdy new stall. But Chidi didn't stop there. He began attending real estate seminars, devouring books on investment, and studying the rising crypto markets with cautious discipline. His life blossomed. By his second year at Skyline, he purchased a piece of land in Lekki. He sold it at a profit 6 months later. Then came more land, then short-let apartments, then partnerships with investors. By the 3rd year, Chidi's life bore no resemblance to the boy who once shared a thin mattress on a cold floor. Now he lived in a white mansion in Lekki Phase. 1-2 stories of marble floors, glass balconies, and a swimming pool that shimmered under the Lagos Sunday. He owned 3 cars, a sleek black Mercedes-Benz, a white Range Rover, and a head-turning sports coupe. His wardrobe brimmed with tailored suits, his wrist adorned with a Swiss watch. But despite the glitter, Chidi never forgot his humble beginnings. He still remembered the taste of Gary in cold water, the humiliation of being turned away at interviews, the sound of Amara's rejection in a crowded mall. Those memories became his compass, grounding him. And fate, in its cruel symmetry, was not done with him. 3 years after that night on 3rd Mainland Bridge, Chidi walked out of a restaurant in Victoria Island, adjusting his sunglasses against the bright Lagos Sunday. He had just finished lunch and was heading toward his gleaming black Mercedes-Benz GLE when he heard a frail, tired voice rising above the street noise. "Please help me feed my children, anything you have." He turned. There by the cracked pavement sat a woman with 2 small children, a boy and a girl, twins no older than 3. Their clothes were mismatched, their feet bare, hair unkempt. The woman clutched them tightly, her wrapper faded, her slippers worn thin. She raised her head, and the world seemed to pause. Chidi froze. The face was gaunt, the eyes sunken but unmistakable. Amara. The woman who once compared him to every richer man she knew. The woman who had spat his dreams back into his face at the mall. The woman who left him for the promise of luxury. Now she sat before him, dirty, broken, begging. For a moment, the busy street faded. All Chidi could hear was the pounding of his own heart. "You," Amara's voice cracked. "You look so good, Chidi." He slowly removed his sunglasses, revealing eyes filled not with anger but with quiet astonishment. "And you," he said, voice low, "you look so lost. What happened to you?" Amara's lips trembled. She looked away, tears gathering. "I don't even know where to start." "Try," he replied firmly. Her voice broke as she confessed how she married Khaled, the wealthy man she had chosen over him. How she lived in luxury for a brief moment only to lose everything when Khaled was arrested for internet fraud. How EFCC seized their properties, cars, accounts. How she was left on the streets with twins, no job, no family to rescue her. Chidi listened silently, his face unreadable. The street noise, the honking danfos, the chatter of traders all blurred into a dull hum. At last he spoke. "Get up, Amara. Take the children. You're coming with me." She looked at him in disbelief, suspicion flickering in her eyes. "After everything I did to you, you would still help me." "I don't pay evil with evil," he said simply. "Let's go." As the Mercedes purred to life, carrying Amara and her twins away from the roadside, the ghost of the past sat quietly in the car with them. Chidi's mansion awaited, and with it the moment where mercy and memory would collide. The drive back to Lekki was quiet, save for the hum of the air conditioner and the occasional whimper of the twins in the back seat. Amara sat stiffly in the passenger seat, her hands twisting the hem of her faded wrapper. She stole glances at Chidi as if unsure whether he was truly flesh and blood or some apparition conjured by her desperation. The last time she had seen him, he was a broken man on his knees in a crowded mall. Now here he was, dressed casually in a crisp polo, and jeans, his wristwatch gleaming, his Mercedes gliding through Lagos traffic with the calm authority of wealth. Chidi said nothing. His face was calm, but his eyes remained focused on the road. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken history. Finally, as they passed the toll gate, Amara whispered, "This car, it's yours." Chidi's lips curved faintly, not into a smile, but into something steadier. "One of them," he replied. Her breath caught. She turned to the window, blinking rapidly. When they pulled into the estate, the high black gates swung open, guards saluting as if welcoming a king. The mansion stood tall, white walls gleaming in the sun-glass balconies, catching the light gardens neatly manicured. Amara's knees nearly buckled as she stepped out, clutching her children close. She had imagined luxury before dreamt of wealth, but standing in the shadow of Chidi's home felt different. It wasn't just money, it was power, discipline, proof of a man who had turned pain into empire. "Follow me," Chidi said simply. Inside, the air smelled faintly of vanilla and polished wood. Marble floors reflected the glow of chandeliers. Servants moved quietly, some pausing to greet him respectfully before hurrying on. Chidi motioned to one of the maids. "Take Madame Amara to the guest room. Prepare a bath for her and the children. Bring clean clothes. Tell the chef to make something filling." Amara opened her mouth to protest, but the words withered. She allowed the maid to lead her down the corridor. For the first time in years, warm water caressed her skin, washing away dirt and exhaustion. Her twins giggled as they splashed in the bathtub, their laughter echoing in the tiled room. Amara wept quietly as she scrubbed their small bodies clean. Half an hour later, she emerged in a simple cotton dress, her hair tied neatly, her children in fresh clothes. They looked almost unrecognizable, no longer the dusty roadside figures, but children with faces brightened by soap and hope. The chef brought steaming plates of jollof rice and fried chicken. The twins attacked the food with the hunger of children too long deprived, while Amara ate slowly at first, then faster, tears spilling as she realized how empty her stomach had been. Across the table, Chidi sat watching. He did not touch his food. He only studied her, his expression unreadable. When she finally set down her fork, she looked up at him, her eyes glassy. "Chidi," she whispered, "I'm sorry. For everything, for the way I treated you, for the words I said, for leaving. I thought I was choosing the better path, but I see now I was wrong. Please, forgive me." Chidi leaned back, folding his arms. "Amara, I forgave you a long time ago. Your leaving pushed me to work harder. It gave me the drive to succeed. In a way, I should thank you." Her tears fell freely now. Do you think we could ever start over?" Chidi's answer was firm, without hesitation. "No, Amara. I have someone now. A woman who stood by me when I had nothing. I can't betray her." The words struck her harder than any insult. She lowered her gaze, shame pressing down like a weight. That night she lay in the soft bed of the guest room, staring at the chandelier above. The twins slept peacefully beside her, but she could not close her eyes. She had once mocked Chidi's ambition, sneered at his poverty, abandoned him for quick wealth. Now here she was in his house, not as his wife, but as a beggar with nothing. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the tall glass windows, gilding the mansion in gold. Amara wandered down the hallway, touching the smooth walls, her feet sinking into Persian rugs. She peeked into Chidi's office, where shelves brimmed with books and multiple computer screens glowed with codes she didn't understand. She stepped into the living room and gasped at the view of the sparkling pool and the gleaming Range Rover parked beside a fountain. Everywhere she looked, she saw the life she could have had, the life she threw away. She found Chidi at the dining table, sipping coffee, his tablet propped before him. He wore a light blue shirt sleeves rolled up, his presence calm yet commanding. "Good morning," she said softly. He looked up briefly. Morning. Did you sleep well? Yes. Thank you. For everything. She hesitated, then sat across from him. Her voice trembled. Chidi, I've been thinking. What happened between us? It was my fault. I was blind. I chose money over love and I lost both. I see the man you've become. I wish I could be part of your life again. Chidi set his tablet down, his eyes fixed on hers. Amara, when you left, I thought it was the end of me, but it became the making of me. I found strength I didn't know I had, and in that time I met Ngozi. She was there when I had nothing. She believed in me when no one else did. I love her and I won't betray her. The rejection was calm, polite, but final. Amara's shoulders slumped. For the rest of the day, she moved through the house in a haze, watching the maids clean silently, listening to Chidi take confident business calls, hearing the twins' laughter echo in halls that could have been theirs. Regret now here like an unrelenting tid. By evening, as the sun dipped low and the pool mirrored the fiery sky, Amara sat at the guest room window. Her children played on the rug behind her. She whispered to herself, "This could have been our life. I could have been his wife. My children could have grown up here. But choices once made carve destinies that cannot be undone." And though Chidi had opened his home to her, she understood the truth. She was only a visitor, a reminder of the past, not part of his future. The next morning dawned bright and unrelenting. Amara awoke to the smell of fresh bread and eggs drifting into the guest room. For a fleeting moment, she imagined that this was her life, waking up in a mansion, her children giggling and a sunlit garden servants, preparing breakfast while she wrapped herself in silk. She stretched, savoring the illusion before the truth settled back on her chest like a stone. This was not her life. It was Chidi's life, and she was only a guest here, a shadow of a choice she once made. A soft knock sounded at the door. The maid stepped in, bowing slightly. "Madame Oga says you should be ready in 1 hour. He will take you somewhere." Amara's pulse quickened. Somewhere? Did he mean to send her away? Panic clawed at her chest. She dressed quickly, fixing her children's hair and wrapping them in the new clothes the servants had provided. An hour later, Chidi appeared at the living room door dressed in a crisp white shirt and tailored trousers. He held his car keys loosely, his expression unreadable. "We're going for a drive," he said. The ride through Lagos was hushed. Amara sat tense beside him, clutching the twins. She stole glances at his profile, the strong line of his jaw, the calm focus in his eyes. He looked every inch a man who had conquered life's storms. She wanted to speak, to plead again, but something about his silence kept her lips sealed. They passed billboards advertising real estate banks and telecoms. Hawkers knocked lightly on windows, holding bottles of water, groundnuts, plantain chips. Lagos was its usual chaos: horns, blaring danfos, weaving dangerously, Okada riders darting like fish in a fast river, but inside the Mercedes it felt like another world. After nearly 30 minutes, Chidi turned into a quieter neighborhood. The car rolled to a stop before a neat, freshly painted 2-story building. Children played football nearby, their laughter ringing out. Women sat by the roadside selling akara. Life here was ordinary, modest, safe. Chidi switched off the engine and turned to face her. "This is where you'll stay from now on." Amara blinked, confused. What do you mean?" He stepped out and opened her door. "Come." Up the short flight of stairs they went, the twins toddling beside her. Chidi unlocked the door to a 2-bedroom apartment. Inside, the walls were painted cream, the tiled floor spotless. A couch sat neatly in the living room, a dining table set in one corner. Bedrooms held clean beds with fresh sheets. Everything was basic but new. "The rent for 1 year is already paid," Chidi said evenly. "The landlord knows you. You won't have to worry about where you and the children will sleep." Amara's knees went weak. She covered her mouth as tears spilled freely. "Chidi, I don't know what to say." "There's more," he continued. He pulled an envelope from his pocket and handed it to her. With trembling fingers, she opened it to find a thick stack of crisp dollar bills. "That's $10,000, he said. "Start a business, feed your children, build something for yourself. Don't waste it." Her sobs came louder now, raw and broken. "Why? After everything I did to you, why are you doing this?" Chidi looked at her for a long moment. "Because I don't repay evil with evil. You hurt me, yes, but your choices also shape me. They push me to fight harder to prove myself. I don't hate you. In fact, I thank you. But that doesn't mean we can go back. My heart belongs to someone else now." Amara sank onto the couch, clutching the envelope to her chest, tears soaking her face. Memories rushed back: the night she mocked his cheap beans, the day she scorned his faded shirts, the humiliation she handed him at the mall. She had traded love for luxury, and in the end she had lost both. The twins, too young to understand, played with the tassels of the couch. Their giggles pierced through her sobs, reminding her of the innocent lives depending on her. She wiped her face, knowing that no amount of tears could rewrite the past. Chidi placed the keys on the table. Take care of yourself, and take care of them. His eyes flicked briefly to the twins before turning toward the door. Chidi, she whispered, her voice cracking. I'm sorry. He paused at the door but didn't look back. Goodbye, Amara. The door clicked shut softly behind him. For a long while, Amara sat frozen, the sound of her children's laughter echoing through the small apartment. She looked around the clean rooms, the new furniture, the envelope heavy with possibility. It was a fresh start, a chance to rebuild. Yet all she could see in her mind was the life she had thrown away, the mansion, the cars, the man who once loved her with a pure heart. Regret wrapped itself around her like a cold blanket. She knew she could live in this apartment, even build something from the money he gave her, but she would forever carry the truth like a scar. She had once held gold in her hands and traded it for dust. And now, though Chidi had shown her mercy, she realized mercy was not the same as love. Later that evening, as she put her twins to bed in their new room, she whispered into the dark, "Learn from me, my children. Don't ever despise a humble beginning. Don't ever trade loyalty for greed." Her words hung in the silence like a prayer to the night. Back at his mansion, Chidi sat in his study, staring at the city lights through the window. His phone buzzed. A message from Ngozi lit up the screen. "Thinking of you. Dinner tomorrow." A small smile curved his lips. He typed back, "Yes, always." For Chidi, the past was finally closed, its weight lifted. For Amara, the lesson had only begun. Amara awoke the next morning to the sound of roosters crowing outside and the voices of school children heading down the street. For the first time in months, her children had slept in proper beds, their soft breaths rising and falling in peaceful rhythm. She lay still, staring at the ceiling, the events of the past 2 days replaying in her mind like a film she could not pause. She remembered Chidi's face as he handed her the apartment keys and the envelope of money. No bitterness, no triumph, no mockery, only calm. That calmness cut deeper than anger ever could. If he had shouted, if he had thrown her mistakes in her face, she might have felt less guilt. But his quiet mercy left her no defense. The twins stirred, stretching and rubbing their eyes. "Mummy food," one of them mumbled, still half asleep. She kissed their foreheads and whispered, "Yes, my babies. Today we will eat, and tomorrow too, I promise." She rose and prepared the small breakfast the maid had stocked in the kitchen: bread, butter, and tea. It wasn't lavish, but compared to the days of begging by the roadside, it was heaven. As the children ate, she opened the envelope again. The crisp bills stared back at her like a second chance. $10,000 of fortune in her hands. It could change everything if she was wise. But wisdom was something she had ignored before. 2 days later, Chidi returned briefly to check on them. His knock was firm, and when Amara opened the door, he stepped in with the quiet authority of someone who belonged wherever he stood. The twins ran to him, clutching his legs. He bent slightly, patting their heads with a warmth that startled even him. "They look better already," he said. "Yes," Amara replied softly, "thanks to you." He nodded, his eyes scanning the apartment. "Have you thought about what to do with the money?" She swallowed. "I want to start a small business. Maybe selling provisions or dried food items at the market. Something steady." "Good. Don't waste it," he said. His tone was firm, almost fatherly. "I've seen people throw away fortune chasing quick gains. Use it wisely. These children depend on you." She lowered her gaze. "I will. I've learned my lesson, Chidi." He looked at her for a long moment, then said simply, "See that you have." With that, he turned and left, leaving behind the faint scent of his cologne and the heavier presence of his integrity. Amara stood there long after the door closed, her heart aching. She had once mocked him for having nothing, yet here he was giving her everything she needed to start again. That evening, as she walked to a nearby shop to buy groceries, she overheard 2 women gossiping by the roadside. "You know that new apartment," one said, pointing. "The lady who just moved in, she was begging on the streets last week. They say a rich man rescued her." "Rich man," the other laughed. "She's lucky. Not everyone gets second chances like that." Amara's cheeks burned. She quickened her pace, clutching the grocery bag tighter. She hated being reduced to gossip, yet she knew she had given people reasons to talk. If she was to rebuild her life, she would need not just money, but dignity, something she had squandered years ago. That night, she sat by the children's bedside and whispered, "I will not waste this chance. I will not let my mistakes define your future. Meanwhile, at his mansion, Chidi was on a call with Ngozi. Yes, love, he said, leaning back in his chair. Everything is settled. She and the twins are safe. Ngozi's voice, warm and steady, came through the line. You did the right thing. Mercy is greater than revenge. That's why I love you. Chidi smiled faintly. He remembered the years when she had believed in him, when he had only one good shirt, when she had encouraged him to apply for jobs despite rejection after rejection. She had never compared him to richer men, never mocked his dreams. She was his anchor, the proof that love could endure without wealth. As he ended the call, his mind wandered briefly back to the night on 3rd Mainland Bridge, the taxi driver's voice ringing in his memory. Your story is not over. This is just a bend in the road. He had promised himself he would never forget. And indeed he hadn't. Weeks passed. Amara opened a small provision store with part of the money. She stocked rice beans, groundnut oil, and dry fish. At first, customers were hesitant. She was the new face in the market, but her polite manner and the sight of her children playing nearby softened people's hearts. Slowly, her business grew. She learned to rise early, to haggle fiercely, to balance the books at night, while her twins slept. Yet even as she built this new life, regret gnawed at her like a persistent rat. Every time she counted her earnings, she remembered how she once mocked Chidi for being too comfortable with small. Now small was what sustained her. Every time she saw a man drive past in a clean car, she remembered how she had traded Chidi's loyalty for Koladi's empty wealth. Sometimes at night, she sat by the window staring at the stars. She would whisper, God, please forgive me. I threw away gold for dust. Don't let my children suffer for my mistakes. One Saturday, as she was closing the shop, she saw Chidi walking toward her. He looked different in the casual jeans and polo, less like a wealthy businessman, more like the boy she once knew. The market women greeted him with respect, whispering about his generosity and success. He stopped in front of her stall, surveying the neat rows of goods. You're doing well, he said. Yes, she replied softly. Thanks to you. It's not thanks to me, he corrected gently. It's thanks to your effort. Don't forget that. She wanted to say more, to confess her lingering regret, to beg again for a second chance, but his eyes held the quiet finality she had come to recognize. So instead, she only nodded. Before leaving, he pressed a small envelope into her hand. For the children, he said. Inside were school supplies and a note. Education is the one inheritance no one can steal. As he walked away, her heart broke all over again. Not because of the rejection, but because of the man he had become, the man she could have had, the man she had lost forever. That night, as she tucked the twins into bed, she whispered, Your father failed you, but I will not. We will rise again, even if only step by step. And in her heart, she knew Chidi's mercy had given her not just a home, but a mirror. Every day she would have to look into it and face the truth. She had traded loyalty for wealth and learned too late that character is the only true currency. For Chidi, life moved forward with calm certainty. His business expanded, his relationship with Ngozi deepened, and his past finally rested in peace. He had given Amara shelter, money, and dignity, but nothing more. His heart remained where it belonged, with the woman who had never abandoned him. Yet sometimes late at night he would remember the broken figure of Amara by the roadside, the twins clinging to her. And he would whisper a silent prayer that she would use her second chance wisely, that her children would grow into better choices than she had made. Because mercy once given is no longer his to control. The following month brought with it a surprising twist that neither Chidi nor Amara could have foreseen. It happened on a warm Saturday morning when Chidi decided to pay an unannounced visit to the apartment he had secured for Amara. He had been thinking about the children, whether they were adjusting well, and whether Amara was truly using the money responsibly. Part of him wanted to see for himself, not out of suspicion, but out of a quiet duty he could not explain. When he arrived at the modest two-story building, he parked his Mercedes discreetly down the street so as not to attract too much attention. Carrying a bag of groceries for the twins, he walked toward the entrance. The landlord, an older man with gray hair and kind eyes, stood near the gate speaking to some tenants. When he noticed Chidi, he straightened up, smiling warmly. Ah, Mr. Okonkwo, the landlord greeted in Yoruba accented English. You've come to check on your people? Chidi nodded politely. Yes. How are they settling in? The landlord's smile deepened. They are doing fine. The children are lively, and the woman, she seems humbled, focused. She comes to me for advice about running her small shop. I can see she is trying. And you, the man's eyes twinkled, you are a good one, my son. Chidi studied him more closely. The man's face looked oddly familiar. Sir, have we met before? The landlord chuckled, adjusting the green cap on his head. Perhaps. Lagos is big, but also small. Then it struck him. The voice, the eyes, the faint smile, it was the taxi driver from that rainy night on Third Mainland Bridge. The man who had pulled him back from the edge of despair. Chidi's breath caught. Wait. It was you, he whispered. That night. The umbrella. You saved me. The landlord's smile softened. Ah, so you remember. Shock coursed through Chidi. Of all the places, of all the people fate had woven their paths together again. Sir, I never even knew your name. I am Baba Tayo, the man said simply, and I thank God that night you listened. Look at you now, a man lifted from ashes. Emotion tightened Chidi's throat. He wanted to fall to his knees in gratitude. Instead, he clasped Baba Tayo's hands firmly. I owe you everything. The older man shook his head. No, you owe me nothing. All I did was remind you that your story was not over. The rest you wrote yourself. But he added, his eyes flicking toward Amara's window. I see you are now planting seeds of mercy for someone who once wounded you. That is good. That is how God repays kindness with more kindness through us. Amara emerged from the apartment, at that moment, a plastic bucket in her hand. When she saw Chidi and the landlord speaking, she paused. She bowed politely. Good morning, sir, she said to Baba Tayo. Morning, my daughter, he replied warmly. How are you managing? Better, sir. I started selling provisions. Small profit, but we are eating. He nodded approvingly. Good, work hard. God bless the hands that labor honestly. As Amara walked back inside, Chidi turned to Baba Tayo again. You know, sir, the irony is strong. She once rejected me because I had nothing. Now she must learn to build with her own hands. The old man placed a firm hand on his shoulder. That is life, my son. Rivers do not always flow straight, but remember, bitterness poisons the one who holds it. You have shown her mercy. That is enough. Let her journey teach her what yours already has. Chidi bowed his head. Thank you, sir. You remind me again why I must never forget that night. Weeks later, Baba Tayo invited Chidi to a community event in the same neighborhood. It was a small gathering where he and a few others were sponsoring a youth training center. The goal was to teach young people basic skills, computer literacy, tailoring, and carpentry, so they wouldn't fall into the traps of crime or despair. Chidi attended curious. He sat quietly at the back, watching as boys and girls filed into the hall with notebooks and eager faces. The walls were bare, the chairs mismatched, but the energy in the room pulsed with possibility. Baba Tayo stood at the front, speaking with passion. These children, he said, are our tomorrow. If we guide them, they will rise. If we abandon them, they will sink. And who knows, among them may be the next great engineer, the next teacher, the next leader of this country. Chidi's chest tightened. He saw himself in those children, the boy who once counted coins, who once patched jeans, who once begged silently for opportunity. He rose from his seat and walked to the front. Sir, he said, turning to Baba Tayo, I want to support this work. I know what it means to be hungry for knowledge, to feel hopeless. If I can give them computers, tutors, whatever they need, I will. The room erupted in applause. Baba Tayo's eyes glistened with pride. Ah, God is faithful. You see, the seed planted years ago is bearing fruit. That evening after the event, Amara approached Chidi quietly. She had attended too curious about the gathering. Her twins clung to her skirt. You want to help these children, she said softly. That's good. I admire that. Chidi nodded. It's the least I can do. Someone once saved me when I was ready to give up. I must pass that forward. Amara swallowed hard, her eyes glistening. I was blind, Chidi. I chose glitter over gold. I mocked you, compared you, abandoned you. And now, I see the man you became. I don't deserve even the mercy you've given me. Chidi studied her face for a moment, then spoke gently. Life teaches us all. Some lessons are sweet, others bitter. But what matters is what we do after we learn. You have a chance now. Don't waste it. These children, your twins, they are your redemption. Raise them better than the choices you made. Amara broke into sobs, crouching to hug her children tightly. I will. I swear I will. Chidi turned away, his heart heavy yet light. He knew he could never erase the past, but he could choose what to do with the future. Mercy was not about forgetting. It was about refusing to let pain define you. That night back at his mansion, Chidi told Ngozi about the encounter with Baba Tayo. She listened quietly, her eyes shining with admiration. You see why I said mercy is greater than revenge, she whispered. Chidi took her hand. Yes, I see it clearly now. Without that man, I wouldn't be here. Without his words, I might not be alive. And without mercy, I would still be chained to bitterness. Ngozi smiled, resting her head against his shoulder. Then we will build together not just for ourselves, but for others. And so in that quiet moment, the circle of fate closed tighter. The man who had been humiliated in public had risen to become a pillar of strength. The woman who had chosen wealth over love was left with regret, but also a path to redemption. And the stranger who once held an umbrella on a rainy bridge had become the bridge himself between despair and hope, between the past and the future. For Chidi, life had come full circle. But the story was not yet over. The weeks that followed the youth training event brought a new rhythm into Chidi's life. His company projects thrived, his investments grew, and his evenings often ended in quiet dinners with Ngozi, the woman who had stood beside him through storms. Yet in the quiet corners of his mind, he carried a new sense of purpose, an urgency to give back. The sight of those eager children with notebooks in their laps, waiting for someone to believe in them, stirred something in him that money alone could not satisfy. He began visiting Babatayo's community center more frequently. Sometimes he brought laptops and routers. Other times he arranged for professionals from Skyline Tech to volunteer as guest instructors. Before long, the center blossomed into a hub of learning. Teenagers who once loitered on street corners now learned coding, typing, tailoring, and business skills. Chidi would sit at the back watching them, a quiet smile on his face. He saw in them the reflection of his younger self, the boy who once dreamed but had no resources. One Saturday, Ngozi accompanied him. She wore a simple Ankara gown, her natural hair tied neatly. The children adored her instantly. She bent to their level, asking about their dreams, encouraging them with a warmth that made Chidi's heart swell. "Chidi," she whispered later as they walked back to his car, "this is your true calling. Not just to build wealth, but to build lives. That's why God gave you this second chance." He squeezed her hand, gratitude flooding his chest. "And he gave me you. Without you, I wouldn't have had the strength to keep going after everything." Ngozi smiled, her eyes shining. "Then let's keep building together." Amara, meanwhile, found herself in an unfamiliar season one of humility. Each day at the market, she stacked her provisions, neatly haggled with customers, and kept meticulous records. Her business was modest but steady. She rose early to prepare her twins for school, thanks to the supplies Chidi had given, and prayed over them before they left. For the first time in years, she began to feel the quiet dignity of honest labor. But the shadow of regret never left her. Sometimes when a man in a clean suit passed by her stall, she remembered how she once demanded those suits from Chidi, mocking his simple clothes. Sometimes when she watched her twins fall asleep, she imagined them running through the wide halls of Chidi's mansion, playing in his manicured garden, living the life she had thrown away. One Sunday afternoon, Amara gathered her courage and visited Babatayo at the community center. She found him seated on a wooden bench, watching a group of children practice typing. She greeted him respectfully and sat beside him. "Papa," she said softly, "how do you live with regret? How do you carry it without drowning?" The old man turned, studying her with kind but steady eyes. "My daughter, regret is like smoke. If you trap it inside, it will choke you. But if you let it rise, it will pass into the sky. You cannot undo yesterday. But you can choose today. Every day you must ask, what lesson will I live so my children don't repeat my mistakes?" Amara's eyes filled with tears. She nodded slowly. "Then I will live differently. For them." "Good," Babatayo said. "That is all God asks, that we learn, repent, and rebuild." Not long after, Chidi invited Amara and the twins to a small family gathering at his mansion. It wasn't to rekindle old ties, but to create closure, to show the children that their mother's past did not have to be their prison. When Amara arrived, dressed simply with her twins in clean uniforms, she felt both awe and shame as she stepped once again into the mansion. The chandeliers glowed, the marble floors gleamed, and the scent of roasted chicken wafted through the air. She had once imagined being the lady of this house. Now she entered only as a guest, humbled. Ngozi welcomed her warmly, a smile softening the edges of what could have been tension. She embraced Amara gently. "You are welcome. Please sit. The children must be hungry." Amara blinked, surprised by the kindness. She had expected coldness, suspicion. Instead, Ngozi's warmth disarmed her. As they sat together at the dining table, Amara whispered, "Thank you for being kind to me. I don't deserve it." Ngozi shook her head. "Mercy is not about what we deserve. It's about what God gives us freely, and because He gave to us, we must give to others." Amara's throat tightened. She looked down, ashamed yet grateful. The evening unfolded with laughter. Chidi's parents had come proud and beaming their voices, carrying the joy of seeing their son not only wealthy but compassionate. The twins played with cousins, their giggles echoing through the halls. For a few hours, the house felt like what it always should have been, not just a palace of wealth, but a home filled with life. Later, as the sun set, Amara stepped onto the balcony with Ngozi. She gazed at the swimming pool below, shimmering in the fading light. "You are blessed," she whispered. Ngozi placed a hand on her shoulder. "And so are you. You've been given another chance. Don't waste it." Amara nodded, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. Weeks turned into months. Amara's business grew. She expanded her shop to include clothing and household goods. Her twins thrived at school, bright and eager. She began to walk taller, not because of riches, but because of resilience. Chidi, meanwhile, proposed to Ngozi in a quiet ceremony, surrounded by family and close friends. There were no viral videos, no public spectacles, just genuine love, sealed with a ring. As he slid the band onto her finger, he whispered, "You were my anchor when I was adrift. Now you are my future." Ngozi smiled through tears. "And you are my answered prayer." Amara attended the engagement, sitting quietly at the back. It stung to see the man she once loved promise his life to another, but it also healed something inside her. She understood finally that his love was no longer hers to claim. What remained was respect, gratitude, and the determination to live differently. As the ceremony ended, Chidi walked over to her. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder and said, "Thank you for coming. It means more than you know." She managed a small smile. "Thank you for not letting bitterness win. You've given me more than I deserve." He nodded. "We all stumble, Amara, but what matters is what we choose after. Choose wisely." For them, he said, glancing at the twins. Her eyes brimmed with tears. "I will." That night, Amara tucked her children into bed in their modest but safe apartment. She whispered a prayer of gratitude for mercy, for second chances for the man who had taught her the hardest but most valuable lesson of her life. And in the quiet that followed, she resolved that her children would never repeat her mistakes. They would learn that true wealth is not in cars or houses, but in loyalty, integrity, and love. For Chidi, the past had finally settled into peace. He had faced humiliation, betrayal, despair, but he had risen. And though fate had returned Amara to his path, he had chosen mercy over revenge, love over bitterness, and a future built on faithfulness. In the end, both their stories had changed. Chidi's life became a testimony of resilience. Amara's life became a reminder of choices and consequences. And woven through it all was a single truth: rivers may bend, but they still flow toward destiny. The day of Chidi and Ngozi's wedding was nothing like the extravagant ceremonies Lagos elites were known for. It was not hosted in a five-star hotel or broadcast on social media for likes and clout. Instead, they chose a quiet church, tucked away on the mainland, the same place Ngozi's parents had once Wednesday. The pews were filled with family, close friends, and a few colleagues, but the air carried a richness that no luxury could match: genuine love, honest prayers, and gratitude. Chidi wore a tailored navy blue suit, sharp yet simple. Ngozi, radiant in a modest lace gown, looked at him as though the years of struggle and patience had all been worth this single moment. When they exchanged vows, there were no quivering hesitations, no eyes darting toward the crowd, only steady voices promising to love through better and worse, through plenty and scarcity, through every bend in the road. Among the guests, Amara sat quietly, her twins beside her, both dressed neatly in borrowed outfits. She had debated whether to come, fearing the pain it might stir. But something in her heart told her this was necessary, not for Chidi, but for herself. To watch him close this chapter fully, to free him in her heart so she could free herself. During the reception, children from the community center performed a short song they had rehearsed for weeks. Their voices rang pure, their eyes alight with hope. Many guests wept softly, touched by the sight. Baba Tayo, now proudly recognized as the center's patron, gave a short blessing. He spoke with his usual quiet wisdom. "Love tested in fire is stronger than gold. Mercy given when wronged is greater than revenge." And the children here, our future, remind us that life always gives us bends, never straight lines. But if we walk them with patience, we find our way. His words sank deep into every heart present, especially Chidi's and Amara's. After the wedding, Chidi and Ngozi began their new life together. They merged their dreams not only as husband and wife, but as partners in vision. Together, they expanded the community center, opening new branches in other neighborhoods. Ngozi introduced women-focused programs, teaching single mothers business skills and literacy. Chidi funded computer labs, ensuring no child would have to peer through cracked cyber cafe windows the way he once had. Their home, though grand, became a hub of mentorship. Young men and women visited for advice, encouragement, and sometimes just to see that someone who once had nothing could rise and still remain humble. Chidi never tired of telling his story, not the sanitized version, but the raw truth. He spoke of rejection, humiliation, nights of hunger, and the bridge where he almost ended it all. He told it not to boast of his triumph, but to remind others that despair is never final. Amara, meanwhile, continued to grow her provision business. With steady hands, she reinvested her profits, added new stock, and eventually rented 2 stalls side by side. Other women in the market began to respect her, not as the one who fell from grace, but as a mother who had rebuilt her life with humility. She began attending evening classes in accounting, determined to manage her growing business properly. Her twins flourished at school, often topping their classes. One evening when her son ran to her waving a certificate for best student in mathematics, Amara wept openly. "You will be greater than me," she told him. "You will not repeat my mistakes." Yet the ache of regret never fully vanished. Every time she passed by Lekki and glimpsed the kind of houses she once dreamed of, her chest tightened. But instead of drowning in sorrow, she turned it into fuel. She told her children her story in bits, not to shame herself, but to teach them. "I once had gold in my hands," she confessed one night as they sat eating beans in their small apartment, "but I traded it for dust because I thought gold must shine immediately. Learn from me. True value is not always shiny at first. Sometimes it is hidden in patience." The twins listened quietly, their eyes wide. As years rolled on, Amara and Chidi's paths crossed occasionally at school events, at community gatherings, at the market, when Chidi stopped by to greet her stall. Each time, there was no bitterness, no longing, only respect. Mercy had built a bridge that resentment could not burn. One afternoon, Amara visited the community center with her twins. They were old enough now to use the computers Chidi had donated. She stood at the doorway watching them type eagerly, their faces lit by the glow of the screens. Chidi, passing by, noticed her. "They are sharp," he said with a smile. "You should be proud." "I am," she whispered, her voice trembling. "And I am grateful to you, to God, even to life's harsh lessons." He nodded gently. "We all walk our roads. Some are smooth, some are filled with stones. But what matters is whether we keep walking." Their eyes met briefly, not as lovers, not as enemies, but as 2 souls who had endured life's fire and come out changed. Amara bowed her head slightly. "Thank you for not letting me drown when you could have watched me sink." Chidi's reply was simple. "If I had done that, I would still be chained to my past. Letting you rise freed me too." That night, as Amara tucked her twins into bed, she reflected on all that had happened. She realized that, though she had lost the chance to be Chidi's wife, she had gained something equally powerful: wisdom. And wisdom she knew would raise her children better than wealth without love ever could. Chidi, in his own mansion, sat beside Ngozi as they planned the next expansion of the community program. He felt a peace that money could never buy. The humiliation at the mall, the bridge, the betrayal, all of it had been transfigured into purpose. True worth is never measured by riches, but by character, loyalty, and resilience. Amara's story became a warning that chasing glitter can blind one to the gold of patience and love. Chidi's journey became a testimony that suffering, when met with endurance and integrity, can birth greatness. And Baba Tayo's role reminded everyone that a single act of kindness can alter destinies. Life's bends will always come. Some will stumble, some will fall. But those who hold on, who choose mercy over revenge, who walk in patience rather than haste, will eventually rise. To you, dear listener, remember this. Do not despise humble beginnings. Do not trade genuine love for fleeting wealth. And above all, when life bends your road, keep walking. You might just find your destiny waiting beyond the curve. We'd love to hear from you. What lesson from Chidi and Amara's story touched you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to our channel so you never miss another powerful African story that can change how you see life.